Silhouettes in wildlife photography have this reputation. They are difficult, advanced, not for beginners. I believe that too. I thought you needed insane skill and years of experience to shoot silhouettes. How wrong was I? Turns out, silhouettes are actually one of the simplest things you can shoot if you just understand the basics around them. In this video, I'll show you exactly how to shoot silhouettes, step by step. No tricks, no shortcuts, just in-camera results. Now, before we get into the camera settings, let's just quickly understand what a silhouette actually is. At its simplest, a silhouette is just a dark subject placed against a bright background. The subject usually has no details, just the shape. And the background, it's almost always way brighter than the subject. Take this photo for example. You can immediately tell that this is a leopard on a tree, even though you can't really see all the fine details. That's the essence of a silhouette. Now, how do you actually shoot something like this? You simply place a dark subject in front of a bright background, and that's pretty much it. Let me show you what I mean. Right now, I have set my camera to auto ISO, so the camera will handle the exposure on its own. And at the moment, the room is pretty evenly lit. So you can see actually both the subject and the background. But now, I'm going to change the lighting. You see this light directly behind the subject? I'll only keep this one on and switch everything else off. Watch what happens carefully. As soon as the camera sees all this bright light in the frame, it tries to bring that brightness down, essentially to achieve a balanced exposure. And to do that, it reduces the exposure and the subject immediately turns dark. That's your silhouette. And think of it. This is what people mean when they say they're exposing for the highlights. All we are really trying to do is protect the bright parts of the image so that the highlights don't get blown out. And when you do that, anything in shadow, in this case the subject, gets pushed into darkness. Now that you know what a silhouette is, the only thing we need to talk about is how to achieve it in the field. See, technically, you just need to do three things. First, you need to ensure that you place your subject against a bright background. Second, you need to meter the frame correctly so that the camera automatically exposes for the highlights and not for the shadows. And third, you just need to keep your subject in focus and sharp. Let's talk about the background first. See, the easiest times to shoot silhouettes are during sunrise and sunset, when the sun is pretty low in the sky. See, this is the time when the background becomes much brighter than the subject. But sunrise and sunset aren't actually the only times you can get a bright background. You can also get strong silhouettes when an animal is positioned against an open sky, even during the day. The key idea stays the same. You're not trying to light the animal. You're placing it in front of something that's brighter than it. Now, let's move on to the ideal camera settings. The first setting we need to talk about is the metering mode. See, in silhouettes, the goal is very simple. You want to preserve the bright parts of the image. And in most situations, those bright areas are going to take up a large part of your frame. And because of that, your go-to metering mode should be evaluative or matrix metering. See, this mode reads light from the entire frame and not just a small portion of it. And that's exactly what we want here. We want the camera to look at all that brightness and pull the exposure down. Now, the next thing we need to talk about are the big three: ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. Set your ISO to auto and let the camera handle exposure adjustments for you. Silhouette scenes are usually dominated by bright light, so high ISO values generally won't be an issue here. This also keeps things really simple and you can rather focus on the subject and the composition. Next, set your aperture. Use a slightly narrower aperture, something like an f8 that works just fine. See, silhouettes rely on shape and not on fine detail. So having enough depth of field to keep your subject's outline clean and crisp really helps a lot. Finally, set your shutter speed and go reasonably fast. Something like 1/1000 works really well. This will help you in freezing movement and ensure that your silhouette stays sharp. The next thing we need to talk about is how to focus. This is the one part that can actually get a little tricky. See, autofocus works by detecting contrast, but in silhouettes, your subject is usually very dark, which means There's often very little contrast on the subject itself. Now, because of that, your camera will sometimes struggle to lock focus on the subject. And when that happens, don't aim for the middle of the subject. Instead, try focusing on the edge of the subject, the point where the dark subject meets the bright background. See, that edge creates enough contrast and it helps the autofocus to identify the point it has to lock onto. The next thing we need to talk about is exposure compensation. See, there can be situations when your background is actually not very bright, and because of that, your camera will not really darken the scene enough. As a result, you'll see some details on your subject. That's when exposure compensation helps a lot. You simply need to underexpose the image. Dial in -1 or -2 or whatever works. The goal is to just darken the subject. Let me quickly show you. See, right now I've reduced the intensity of the backlight. You can still make out some details on the subject. So I'll dial in a negative exposure compensation. As soon as I do that, the subject turns dark and the silhouette looks clean. That's pretty much it. These are the only settings that matter. And now that you know how to shoot a silhouette, here are 4 quick tips which will help you in shooting beautiful silhouettes. Tip number 1, it's all about the shape. See, the beauty of a silhouette is actually in the shape of the animal. So your focus should be on getting that precise moment when the shape of the animal is very clearly defined. Some angles work, some don't. For example, an elephant from the side is instantly recognizable. But from behind, the same elephant can just turn into a dark blob. That's why positioning and angle are absolutely critical when you're shooting silhouettes. Tip number 2, keep the background clean. Try to keep the background as clean as possible. See, too much clutter between your subject and the bright background will make the silhouette harder to read. A strong silhouette is usually one where the subject clearly stands out against a simple bright backdrop. Tip number 3, separate the subject from the surroundings. See, avoid frames where your subject merges with what's around it. For example, legs blending into grass or heads merging with trees. Just avoid those frames. Your goal is to make sure that the shape of the subject remains clearly defined and it doesn't get lost in what's surrounding it. Tip number 4, use editing intentionally. See, you should absolutely use editing to bring a silhouette to life. Enhance the colors in the sky, refine the tones, deepen the shadows in the subject. Editing is where you can actually add that last extra punch that can make the frame striking. For example, bringing out those beautiful hues in the sky that more often than not make silhouettes so striking. Just one important thing to keep in mind though, don't create the entire silhouette in post. Capture the silhouette in camera and then use editing to refine and polish what's already there. And that's really it. Silhouettes aren't advanced. They're not fancy edits. They're simply about understanding light and exposing it correctly. Once you see that, silhouettes become simple and repeatable. If this video helped you, give it a like. I'm Shantanu and I'll see you in the next one.